I am going to tell you some stories today, most of them incredibly fun. I've entitled my presentation Reinventing Anythink, Catalyst for Innovation. Before I start, I'd like all of you to take about 20 seconds, and I'd like you to think back to where you were when you were 10 years old. Where did you live? How did it feel to be 10 years old? I'm just going to pause a minute. This will become evident at the end of my speech. Think about what was it like to be 10 years old. Okay. My first job out of college was working as a clerk typist at the Denver Public Library. It was not my best job. It was not my favorite job, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about library culture. I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do. I sat quietly in the back with one of my colleagues typing those horrible card catalog cards, and I know that that's dating my experience. And I watched the librarians, who were brilliant people, some of the smartest people I'll ever meet, talk with customers at those big, heavy wood service desks. And they didn't make people feel good. People would walk up to the desk with a call number or a question, and sometimes the call number wasn't complete. And I remember one of those librarians with the bun throwing that piece of paper back across the desk saying that was not a proper call number. Bring it back when they could fill it out appropriately. Yeah. Our culture at that time was very formal and very structured, and there was a hierarchy. The shelvers or the pages, when we went on break, could sit together and have coffee. The clerical folks, we could sit together and have coffee, and then the professional staff seemed to mill about together and have coffee. And you were never allowed to sit at the wrong table unless you were asked. That did not feel good. I decided I had to get out of that job really fast. I went to college, so I didn't have to be a typist, and I promoted to library assistant at a branch. Thank goodness. I was mentored by a wonderful children's librarian, Mrs. Jackson, and the staff at that branch taught me what it was like to be a real librarian. They were generous and creative and loving and passionate about their work. I call them the Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire librarians because they danced around the library as they provided roving reference. They just loved their work, and they kind of took me under their tutelage. And it was there I fell in love with being a librarian and becoming a children's librarian. Fast forward a little while, I became the children's library manager at Denver Public when we were building the new Michael Graves building. We did focus groups to get some marketing research to understand what our customers needed, and we worked with kids. We worked with young children, we worked with older children, we worked with parents, and the kids said, the library is too beige and boring. And we asked them about the librarians, and they said, well, they're sometimes scary. Where is Skip? They're sometimes scary, and we say, well, what do you do? And they said, well, what we do is we just wait for the nice librarian to come on, and then we ask the nice librarian the questions. And I remember one Saturday morning when we were talking to the parents, and the parents said, you know, I know that there's some kind of classification system in this library, and I've been using it for years, but for the life of me, I cannot figure it out. I think it would be good if you librarians would organize your books in a way that we could actually find them in the library. Now, those comments and those impressions and listening to people early on formed really what has become my life's work. So fast forward again. I was library director in West Palm Beach, Florida, and my son and daughter-in-law called and said, "Mom, we're pregnant." And I said, "We're moving back to Colorado." And I started applying for jobs, and the library director job for what then was the Rangeview Public Library, which had been the Adams County Public Libraries, came available. And this is what I was about to inherit. When I took a look at this possibility and I began that interview process, I asked a lot of colleagues, what should I do? And they all said, well, they could sure use somebody like you, Pam, but I sure couldn't work there. I got the job. After telling the library board that if they wanted to build just regular vanilla libraries, don't hire me, because I believe in leadership, doing what has been called JFKing it, is asking people to shoot for the moon. And unanimously, they voted in my favor. This is what happened next. We very quickly had to realign that ship. We built 4 new, I have to back up a little bit. We were the poorest library system in Colorado. And then in 2006, the community voted yes to increase our funding, and then we were the second poorest funded library system. That's when I came on board. We built 4 new libraries, we renovated 3, but more importantly, we completely reinvented what a public library could be for our community. And Adams County is the county just north of Denver. We do not have a lot of education or cultural amenities. We were a rural, middle-class, blue-collar community, and that's rapidly changing. As we were building our libraries, I had to throw away the building program that I inherited that cost a lot of money, that just threw a bunch of books into the building, because we needed space for people. And that really is our mantra, is our library is all about supporting people. Books are our product, and it's so important to us, but it's all about supporting people. So our libraries we designed as bookstores, more like bookstores, and when you walk in the door, we want people to feel that metaphorical hug. We want people to feel smart and belonging and welcomed when they walk in. We also made some pretty big and somewhat drastic decisions about how the experience was going to occur in our library. One, we did eliminate Dewey Decimal, and we've gotten death threats for that. One of the people on our team is known as the man who killed Dewey. And it works. Again, we have a small browsing collection, basically popular reading collection at this moment, and it works for us, and it gives people the power to be able to discover their own materials and ask for help if they'd like. We also went to work on creating a culture that supported the kind of library that we were becoming. And we eliminated fines in 2009, so we've been fine-free for over 10 years, and our community loves it. We broke down a lot of other barriers as well. And one of them is you have to be quiet in the library, or you can't eat food in the library. But one of the most important things we did is actually we created a mission statement and values that we live by. That really is the backbone for our culture. We open doors for curious minds is our mission statement. And to me, that means I'll open that door, but if you're not curious, I can't help. Just as Skip said this morning, it's not my job to do that work. It's my job to create that platform for people to come in and utilize like one of the best assets in our community. Our values. We have compassion for our customers and each other. We have passion for our product. We're a learning organization. We believe everyone is creative. And when we first started talking about creativity, everybody said to me, but I'm not Beethoven. That's not being creative is about. Being creative is being about solving problems. And what do you do when you only have like 3 things in the cupboard and you have to fix dinner? That's creativity. We believe, and only hire people who have optimistic attitudes. We believe anything is possible. And at our library, one of the things that we do is we hire for these values and these competencies that we expect people to, A, love people, B, be team players, own their work, be creative, and most of all, be happy. And we actually asked that question on the interview for all of our jobs is what makes you happy? And then we listen very carefully. And I don't care what it is that they say. I listen to how they talk about happiness. And you can tell if a person's happy or not. We created the Experience Library, where the experience of the library is really one of the things we pay a lot of attention to. Customers will consistently be delighted by their library experience from the minute they walk in the door to the time that they interact with staff, to discovering that wonderful book or program or staff member in the library. And one of the things that guided this experience philosophy actually dates back to the 2008 OCLC research that came out from awareness to funding. There were 2 things that were my key takeaways from that particular piece of research. Number 1, transformative experiences. People who had transformative experiences at the library are more likely to vote to increase funding. And the other one was passionate librarian. We really stared, it was chapter 4. I read and reread and I photocopied and I shared this and I shared it with my board and I shared it with my staff and I just said, this is it. This is it right here. This is our work. If you take a look at this graph, you've got information. And that's really the land that libraries live in or have lived in. So that's all about databases and newspapers and facts. And then on the other side, you've got transformation. And this is about creating those transformative experiences like reading a poem or going to the museum or listening to music and creating those experiences, whatever they might be, in the library is something we've been working on because creating those experiences and understanding that the library isn't just the place for books. The library is a place where we actually connect people with information and we create that transformation, and it could be seen as a catalyst. That's our work, is to be a catalyst to connect those things so that people actually can utilize the library as a platform for having a successful quality of life. One of the things that we did is we created this experience expectation, and we worked hard with our team, and we realized that we actually had to communicate it with our community as well. Our community was experiencing this new kind of library, and they absolutely loved it, but we needed to communicate a little more literally, and so we've created this campaign called My Place To. This one is my place to get my hands dirty. And it actually shares with people that the library is a place where you can just come in and check out a book on gardening, or you could take a beekeeping class, or you could become a master gardener. So it's that leveling up. And in my career, I am working on mastery of actually being a library director. And it'll never be over. I'm also working on mastery of making that perfect pie. This is another component of my place to create a masterpiece. And we've used this campaign to help our community understand really what is it? What is the library about today? And it's changing, but why is it changing? And what does that mean to me? And it's all about, it's my place. It's not the librarian's place, it's my place. So we air that ad in unpredictable places. Sometimes we air that ad on Comcast, and people view that when they're watching a football game, and they get calls the next day. I saw this ad on TV, and it surprised me, and I think it's really great. So it's about shifting perceptions and helping our community understand that the library is changing, and we have to work together as a library profession to do this. And this is what we're doing in my community for my way. So about 3.5 years ago, my library board had a retreat, and they said, Pam and the admin team, we think you need to reinvent yourself. That was daunting. It was like, reinvent ourselves? We just invented ourselves. What are you talking about? And they said, we don't want you to get bored. We think you need a challenge. And so you should reinvent anything. So we're calling it Anythink 2.0. And part of Anythink 2.0 is Adams County actually is the 8th fastest growing county in the country. And so things are rapidly changing. And we're no longer that rural blue class community. We are the community that, as people, the creatives are being driven out by high prices in Denver. They're moving to Adams County because we still have land, we still have water. And our community is expecting higher levels of services from everyone, including the library. So we began a strategic plan, and we were very outward facing. We spent the year listening to our community and asking them, what did they want? But we didn't ask them about the library, so to speak. We asked them, what do they love about Adams County? We asked them what was missing. We asked them to design their optimum neighborhood. And here's an example of one of our neighborhood meetings where people are drawing and sketching and making their ideal community, and it always comes down to one thing. It's basically Disney Main Street. It's just a couple of blocks long, and you've got all your favorite things there. You've got a school, you've got a coffee shop. Our folks always want mom and pop businesses. You have a craft brewery or a wine bar, you've got a church, you've got a bank, and the public library is always someplace in the middle. But people want to live in a community where they're connected, they know their neighbors, and they feel safe. Whether they are rural, urban, or suburban, it's just a matter of how close people want to live. But everybody wants the same thing, which I think is fascinating. They want to be connected, they want to be safe, they want to know their neighbors, and they want to live in an environment where they can challenge their mind. So one of our meetings that we had was with teens, and the teens spent their time talking about their hopes and dreams and their aspirations as they grow older. The other thing that they asked about was their librarian, their teen librarian. And actually, they said that their librarian, Janae, was one of the most important people in their lives, and they put Janae in the center of their neighborhood. Because without Janae, they couldn't see themselves having or fulfilling their hopes and their dreams, which to me seems like one of those huge testaments to passionate librarians. We really do make a difference. So as we continued the research, it divided into 3 strategies that I'll tell you just a little bit about. Community. The library, our work really is about connecting people, connecting agencies, creating partnerships, and putting these elements together and connecting them with ideas and information, and then actually being that catalyst to make something happen. A couple of years ago, we actually wrote a grant with Tri-County Health to do community gardens at 3 of our libraries. And of course, I thought it was about healthy vegetables, healthy eating. And working with Denver Urban Gardens, we discovered their motto is building community one garden at a time. It's all about building community. So 2 years ago, when Judy Fowler from the Tri-County Health called us and said, I'd like to work with you all, and we'd like to have a farmer's market at your library, of course we said yes, because that's what we do. And yep, there were some troubles, and there were some things that didn't work right. But here we are, second year. What's happening is Tri-County Health actually works with the American Heart Association. There are health checkups there. There are also WIC coupons, so families can come and get their discounted food, and they get all this wonderful healthy vegetables. Connecting people. One of my favorite books that I never finished was Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam, and he talks about community and connections, and the number of times, the healthier the community is the number of times that people actually have those moments that they come together. They go to council meetings or block parties, or they invite people to dinner, or they go to church. They know each other, and they support each other, and they care for each other. And so we started doing block parties all over our community. We had a huge block party, and we had 500 people at one of our libraries, and they served hot dogs, and there was fabulous music. We worked with the fire department, and then one of our block parties actually was a dog brunch in a new community. And if you think about it, your dog is one of your best connectors. So we invited everybody to bring their dogs, and we had biscuits, and then we had scones, and it was one of the big hits. In fact, it was such a big hit that we did it twice. And at these block parties where people could come together and meet their neighbor and talk to each other, we also had caricature cartoonists sketching people, and at the dog party, they sketched the dogs. Now, the block parties were such a hit that it impressed Adams County, and the Adams County commissioners, before I started, actually, they're the folks that kind of kicked our library system out of Adams County government because we were doing such a bad job. However, years later, they're beginning to ask, why did we kick you out? And they love the block party idea so much that one of their, I think it's their neighborhood ambassador, called me about a year ago and said, Pam, this is what I'd like to do. We love those block parties so much, we are actually would like to put up block party sheds on your property where people can come and check out all the equipment, tables, chairs, etc., that they need to do a block party. Can you help us? Now, my team was not so excited about that because also it involved things like checking out lawnmowers, etc. And initially I said, I don't know if we can do this. But then Rebecca came back and said, Pam, whatever it is that I can do to make this work for you, I just want this project to happen because it's so important to us. And I said, okay, let's talk about it. And of course, now we're doing it. And this is a picture of the Adams County commissioners who visited us this summer. Actually, we're back in their good graces because we're one of the first places that they like to bring visitors when they are showing Adams County off. And this is actually a delegation from Japan. It's PD Aerospace. They are in Adams County. We're creating something called Spaceport, where we will have commercial space travel within the next 5 to 10 years. And this small startup company is determined to build a spaceship that you can fly to the moon commercially. And that young woman in the long white dress was introduced to me as a young woman who wants to be an astronaut when she grows up. So this is just an idea of how the library in short 10 years has really changed how we're perceived and how we serve our community. Again, community. We brought in Priya Parker, and her book is The Art of Gathering. One of the things that she talks about is whenever you create a gathering, you need to spend as much time thinking about the purpose of the gathering as you do the menu or how you're going to line up the chairs and the tables. And one of the things that she says is, never start a funeral with logistics. Meaning, when you are doing a presentation, remember the first things that you say and the last things that you say are going to be the things that people remember. So don't start the funeral telling people where the restrooms are. She came and she did 2 presentations for us, one for the community, and we had about 200 people, and she had 200 strangers in our meeting room that we couldn't fit 200 strangers without chairs gathering in circles, and she kept asking them questions. I mean, it started out as easy questions like, who lives in Adams County? And then it ended up with questions like, who has a vulnerable moment that you'd like to share? And it was remarkable how these folks from all over our community were ready and wanting to talk about what was going on in their lives. And as we left, I was talking to people and I asked them, well, how did they feel? And she said, people would say connected. And that's what people are looking for, is connections. So one of the things that we did is think about your kitchen table. Isn't that the place in your home where everybody wants to gather? And so we created a kitchen table in one of our libraries as a space where people could come together, and whether they were people that you know or strangers, have a cup of tea, sit together, and have a gab. We created a number of podcasts about this as well. We've been working with Aspen Institute for a number of years, and a project that we worked on this year was Better Arguments, which is, we were one of 2 libraries in the country or 2 communities in the country that actually, they're putting up a model of how to have better arguments. And one of the ways to do that is you have to listen without judgment. So we had over 100 people in our meeting room talking about the tech tensions that are happening in Denver. Because we have all these wonderful tech companies moving in, but it's creating a lot of inequalities in our community and disparities. And the folks who need it most are not necessarily the folks that are on the receiving end of this. And we had this amazing conversation, and people had lunch and they didn't want to go home. Career. One of our strategies is we support entrepreneurship in our community. And we're trying to figure this out. And I hope you understand, we're trying to figure all of this out. And we've been working with the Metro Chamber of Commerce to discover what is that slice, what is the scope that's important for our community, actually, to be supportive of alternative education and vocational education. And this is one of the things that they said is, well, what if you actually had a space where you could come and learn things like auto mechanics? At our library, we have something called Any Ability, which is an initiative that was started by one of the staff members that's all about supporting adults with disabilities. And they've been working all year long, and it happened last Thursday, in which we had a career fair for adults with disabilities. We had, again, about 100 people in that meeting room, and the adults came in and they could meet with potential employers. We did free headshots, and we also did resume coaching, that type of thing. And so this is a group of people that a lot of libraries don't think about, but my staff thought that this is really important, and we've all grown because of understanding this work. Culture. In Adams County, we don't have an art museum or a children's museum or a museum of nature and science. So we've been working in partnership with a lot of the culturals in Denver. We've actually been working with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science for years and years and years, and we do programming with them. And we have a big dream about, perhaps when we build a new library, we might actually have some exhibits or interactives that are happening at our new library that are from the museum. Again, just this summer, the Children's Museum folks called and said, we have this new interactive exhibit, Adventure Forest, and we're marketing it in the suburbs. We'd like to come to your library, and we'd like to put up images, the Council of Animals, to help market this. And within 10 days, we had these beautiful it's like wallpaper on some of our buildings to advertise the work of the Children's Museum and to encourage people to go to the Children's Museum. And the person who is from the Children's Museum said, you know, I really would love to have a presence in Adams County, but I don't want to build a building. Hold that thought. So here we are. One of the ideas that has happened in our work, listening to our community, is they've said, we love what you do and we want you to do more of it. We're on the ballot this year to increase our funding to hopefully build 2 new libraries. And what has happened is that dream of, for us, a big library about 100,000 square feet is coming to fruition. Last year, we took about 22 people to visit Denmark, Dock 1, which you all know is just like one of the most amazing libraries in the world. It was voted most beautiful public library in the world a couple years ago. And I think Rolf spoke last year at this conference, one of my heroes, and Marie Ostergaard. So we visited them. We had library board members. We had a person who was the assistant city manager of Thornton. We had architects and some administrative staff. And the reason that we brought these folks to Denmark is because we wanted to plant the idea of that big dream, that the library could be something much more. And we came back, and I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. My library board had been working on site selection for this new project, and this is what's happening. The assistant city manager of Thornton came to me a couple months ago and said, Pam, you know, we've been working on this project together, and we've been helping you find open land in Thornton, and lo and behold, the city of Thornton owns 139 acres. And it's zoned open land. We own it, and we want to work with you on this project. We want to master plan this land with you. And here we are, board members, staff members, Parks and Rec people, city manager, assistant city manager. This is our first walkthrough of this land, which is the most beautiful land in Thornton, by the way, that has 360 views. You can see the mountains, you can see downtown, you can see the plains. And this is our next project. And this is one of our vision statements for working through what is this land going to be like and what's this library going to be like. A place to practice being human. So think about that. This is our evolution of what's next for our library, creating that nature experience, creating that cultural experience that's going to be a destination not just for the city of Thornton or Adams County, but probably the entire Denver metro area and Colorado. It's going to be a unique experience. Where we think about what do you love to do outdoors? And that's what we're going to be asking people in another week at a community meeting. And that's going to be the beginnings of planning this 139 acres. So I'm going to go back to, what did it feel like when you were 10 years old? And the reason I ask you that question is because Anythink is 10 years old this year. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary second week in September. And that's what I keep telling people. We're only 10 years old. We don't have it all figured out yet. And one of the things that is incredibly awesome and filled with wonder is we feel like the whole future, our whole life is ahead of us, and that we can invent anything. We can become anything because of our values, our community that is so supportive of us, and our optimistic attitude. And so, as you're thinking about what you're going to do with your library when you go back home, think about being 10 years old. Because when you're 10 years old, you can invent anything. My close is something that I've learned in my life. I'm not necessarily a gregarious person. I really wanted to be a writer. which meant I was going to invent worlds sitting at my desk writing poetry. And what I've discovered in my life is this African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And this image is paired with these tennis shoes, which were a pair of Jack Taylors that we gave to all of our staff and partners last December as a gift to remind them that the only way that we're actually going to be able to pull this off is to go together. And so with that, I close my remarks and I'll open it up for questions.